Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm videodiary. I should see what's going on a lovely island of Fawnhallow today, where I'm just recording some Animal Crossing, basically to warm up my, I don't know why I said that so weirdly, warm up my vocal cords before I start streaming for today, 2 to 5. Hopefully you're tuning in, and if you're not, that's totally fine. You know, and I think certainly the first stream will probably have the most viewers for a while, because people are like, "Whoa, first stream, crazy!" And then the other streams following on will presumably have fewer and fewer until the audience starts building up, and then it'll get higher and higher. But either way, it's fun. So hello there, everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 1:21 p.m. on Sunday, April 7th, 2024. As you can probably tell by the title of this video, presuming that's what I end up talking about, is that I played a bit of content warning yesterday. I talked a little bit about it, actually, in the Animal Crossing episode yesterday, where I was like, it looks like a curious game. And I guess we'll just sort of talk about it because, as is usually the case for me, for whatever reason, after I play a game, instead of just indulging in it, I'm just like, okay, then now let's critically dissect this game, kind of, except for I don't really have experience of like video game design or anything like that, so it's really not my place to necessarily say, or everything I say is very subjective. So of course, don't take what I say with more than a grain of salt. But content warning, if you don't know, is basically a sort of Lethal Company-esque game, if you've played that. But if you haven't played that, it's basically a cooperative horror survival game. Kind of. It's not really survival, I suppose, in that sense. I mean, I guess it technically is, but it's sort of like I feel like it's misleading to call it survival. But it's a cooperative horror game, where the grander concept is you and 3 other people are trying to record cryptids, basically capture them on film. And that sort of thing. So you have a video camera, you go down into, I don't even know, like the underworld or something, and you basically explore around looking for monsters and trying to record them on camera and get views. And then that views is basically your sort of like your goal, your currency, to allow you to perpetuate and keep going and going and going until you can't attain the view rating anymore, which I don't really know what happens when that happens, to be perfectly honest. So how do I rate it overall? I would say it's actually a pretty nice, fun party game, with a strange caveat where I'm hesitant on it, say I'm not holding back on it necessarily, but I'm unsure on where I personally stand on it. I don't think it's bad. I want to clarify, if you want a fun party game, this is a fantastic fun party game. The same way that Lethal Company, well, not quite the same ways, but similar ways, I suppose, Lethal Company is. It's a really cool, fun party game. I think it brings a really interesting sort of concept and like a premise in the first place, which I've not super seen. Like the closest I've seen, I think about is like I can't remember which horror game is, Outlast or something, which you use like the camera in the horror environment, but that's very much sort of much more focused on like the spooks and scares compared to this game, which is much more sort of like silly scare. Like this is like campy horror, while Outlast is meant to be more like actual horror, right? Yeah. So I mean, what does it do well? I mean, in my opinion, it's a fantastically fun sort of like mess around with friends sort of game, and I think it's literally by design. Like the entire premise of a game is built on the concept of you need to make funny, silly videos. It basically puts everyone into the mind of like that a content, not even a content creator, but like that sort of like id of a content creator, like that the little demon in the back of the voice where it's like, do this for the views sort of thing. Which sure, in reality, people would generally see as quite obnoxious, to be honest, but it allows you, I suppose, to play up that sort of persona. And honestly, I can see it like when my friends play, like they're coming up with like weird ideas and like, let's do it like this, and then as soon as the camera starts recording, they go like, what's up everybody, that sort of very, very animated, like almost in a parody, but adopting like a camera sort of persona in a way, which I think is awesome to see. It's great. The best way to have fun times is if everyone around you is also having a fun time. So I think that's pretty cool. It's certainly not like a side I see too often of some of my friends. To be perfectly honest, to see them so animated in this way and to see them not say see them be so goofy, but like from the videos that they've seen and from the games I've played with some of them, is it's fun to see, I suppose, in that regard. So yeah, it's a really good facilitator, I think, for these sort of fun, goofy moments that you have, silly times you have with friends. But this should be like a sit-down episode. I don't know why I'm going around actually doing stuff on Animal Crossing rather than just sitting here discussing things. And that's pretty cool. And horror elements, it does okay. I don't think it's actually that spookier game. Like, I found Lethal Company like had a really nice sort of tension and atmosphere to it. I think this one, because the entire vibe is so comical, it feels like it's not quite a disjoint, but I guess it's harder to take the scary things in this game so seriously, because I mean, that is the point, don't get me wrong. Because the entire point is to like reframe everything. Because when you die in this game, rather than being like, whoa, that was this super tense, like, scary moment or something, you're just like, oh, how can we ham it up for the video recording, for the views, for the camera, for this fake live stream that we're doing? Well, not fake live stream, I guess, because it's something you upload, but fake video that you're creating. It, by nature, is the premise of the game, so I'm not saying that as, like, a negative point. It's just, like, an interesting sort of vibe. Because I guess with horror, it's one of the genres which is so intrinsically tied to the emotions it's meant to invoke that it makes it difficult to really expand on that space, I think. Which is why Lethal Company was such an interesting sort of breath of fresh air, because horror is meant to make you scared. It's meant to make you frighten you. It's meant to make things feel tense or dramatic in that sense. It was so strange having Lethal Company just be so comedic, I suppose. Despite having Lethal Company, I don't know if it was inherently made to be comedic necessarily, because it's not like any of the monsters are designed to like be silly, goofy guys or anything like that. It's just kind of more like hijinks which ensue by nature of a design, the game design, I suppose, the gameplay loop. Well, this one, it feels like on the other foot, where it's like, yes, a lot of these creatures are designed to be like, well, I shouldn't say they are designed to be, because they're not really, now I think about it more often. It's more like the rest of the thing around it, the entire premise surrounding it is so inherently silly and comedic that it's hard not to also impose that, I think, onto the rest of the game as well, which I don't know if that's necessarily a benefit or deficit. I think that's kind of dependent on you and what you're looking for. If you're looking for like a really tight horror experience, I don't think this is a game to go to, but if you're looking for a fun time with friends, especially friends who I assume would not normally play horror but might play this game because it's such like a farce, I suppose, in the first place, it makes it quite light-hearted, I think, to deal with. I think it's a good point. I feel like most friends could probably, most people could get into it in the same sort of way that it's like, oh, you know, playing a horror game is silly intense, but now it's like you put this sort of wrapper on it, being like, oh, now you're pretending to be like obnoxious content creators who are like, oh, we're going to go check out abandoned buildings and do stupid and silly stuff. You can say whatever. It's sort of like releasing inhibitors on it and reframing everything, which I think is really actually quite cool. But yeah, that's why I think it's so interesting to have like a completely different intended emotional reaction to this horror genre, I suppose, in general. Because instead of, I don't think this is a game where it's meant to be like, at least in my opinion, instead of this being like a horror game that's meant to make you scared, it's meant to be a horror game which makes you laugh, if anything, I suppose. Despite the fact that the monster designs aren't honestly designed like comically, because I suppose they still need to keep a horror wrapper on it, right? But the monsters aren't like super scary, or at least I haven't run into like a super scary one. The thing which is the scariest about this game is so loud, is what I'd say. So I would recommend you, if you play this game, I didn't learn until like the fourth run or something, turn that sound volume all the way down, because all the noises in this game are so incredibly loud. It's even hard to hear my friends. Well, I found it hard to hear my friends over what was talking. Over just like talking and that sort of thing. And I don't know why they do this. Well, I mean, I understand why they do this, but I feel like it's highly unnecessary. But every single time there is a monster, it plays this incredibly loud like horror sting. It goes like bang, which is of course meant to be like a jump scare sort of thing, but I'm just like, I don't know if you need that in this game, to be perfectly honest. That sort of just gives me vibes of Five Nights at Freddy's, because when that happens, it's like, oh, that's the death sound, you basically kind of die or whatever. I guess what I mean to say is that it feels like a cheap way to get the scare out of it. And also I feel like, as I said before, it doesn't feel necessary for this game, because I don't think this game is necessarily trying to scare you as much. I mean, that might not be the intent of the developer, so again, if I'm completely wrong, they can do whatever they like, it's their game. This is just sort of my perspective of it, and they're obviously not creating this game to tailor it to me, because that would be insane. Don't do that. Tailor it to the audience you want to engage with it, right? This game is just too like loud. It's weird because most of the game is actually quite quiet, but it's just the sounds is just so loud. So turning it way down, I haven't actually had a chance to play the game on like turned down volume settings, but it was just like by the like, I can't remember, fifth day or something, I was just like, everything is just so loud. Like I'm not really someone who gets like headaches from like a load of constant noise, but I was just like, this is like annoying at this point. I think it's sort of, maybe that's because my friends were being very silly as well, playing like with items. Like we've got like a defibrillator, makes just the loudest noise in the world, and they're constantly spamming it. I don't mean that as a shot at my friends. Like, of course, they should be silly. They should be having fun and doing goofy things like that. Honestly, I should have just turned down the sound effects way earlier. I just didn't really realize that you could do it separately. Yeah, I forgot what I was saying was. So it's fun. I would say mechanically it's... I feel like the premise mechanically is pretty cool, to be able to like, try and like catch cool recordings, and then everyone else is basically sort of fodder for the content mill in the first place. I think that is a really cool, fun mechanic idea, in the first place. I can't help but feel like, instead of it being like a I don't know, I'm like of two minds about this. Because in one mind, when I play the game, I feel like it doesn't have a drive of like a goal to do. Because it feels much more arbitrary. Like with Lethal Company is, you get the items, you bring it back, you know, you have like an actual assigned value to it. You can feel like you're making progress in that sense. While in Content Warning, it's all basically bundled up into the video camera. So only one person, I suppose, has that sort of director role in the first place, which holds the key to actual any goals whatsoever. Everyone else is kind of there to goof around and have fun, which again, as I say, I think lends itself well to the game, because I feel like that's what the game is going for. But it's basically like all the progress you feel like you make is just like compacted into one thing. So rather than like Lethal Company, you have like the slow progress of amounting items over time. And you can see like the cash values, you bring them back to the ship and that sort of thing. This one is basically, it's all or nothing. Like you get it all on camera or you don't, and that's it. And then you had to upload it afterwards, which makes me feel like, I wonder if it should have been a live stream that you're doing rather than a YouTube video. I don't know. But it still should be a deficit if you all die. Like obviously, like the caveat to that is like, if you have it as a live stream, then maybe it's harder to justify a deficit of like losing all progress if you die. Which I'm just like, yeah, that's fair, but I feel like, I almost feel like the goals of a game, I don't know how to say it, like, the attempt of trying to like, I don't know where to put it, like, having this sort of like threshold thing with a game feels like it's at odds for how I want to interact with a game in that sense, right? Because a Lethal Company, I hate to draw comparisons to Lethal Company literally at like every other breath, but literally it's like the only other game, well not the only other game, there's other games like Phantasmophobia, stuff like that, but those all have a very sort of different vibe. They all very much are trying to scare you. Well, this is like a sort of like the first sort of genre, I suppose, of games of being cooperative horror, which is not trying to necessarily scare you in that sense. More about trying to make these moments and stories which you remember for friends. Lethal Company not being built, what are you doing, Apollo? You're just dusting on me. Being entirely built on that premise, while Content Warning is built on that premise. It almost feels like, because it's so entrenched in premise to have these fun, silly, like in a meta level, and I don't mean in world, I don't mean in universe, I mean like on a meta level, the premise of a game is have a stupid, silly, fun time with friends, make these videos and watch them afterwards to just have an absolute laugh with. It almost feels like having these goals, these like threshold goals which you're aiming for in the first place. One, it feels very arbitrary because, you know, what metrics are necessarily defined, but I feel like they do need to have some sort of metrics in the end, otherwise and they need to have some sort of like challenge or goal in the first place, otherwise there almost is no point to it. Or not no point to the game, but you need some sort of thing to drive it forward, otherwise I think it will lose its luster very quickly. I don't know how to put it, except for I feel like it's not quite the execution I wanted for it, which is why I'm like, I feel like it should be a live stream and you see your concurrent viewers of that sort of thing, and as you do crazy things you see your viewers tick up in real time, because then that gives you a positive feedback loop of, oh, that crazy thing I just did, people loved that, let's do it again, let's try and do it again. Like you're like looking at a monster and you're recording it and then like it kills one of your friends, and then your friends, you just go crazy, but then you see like your viewers spike up and you're like, oh, okay, no, hold on, wait, this is great for content, we gotta go and push it forward. Having all the sort of like feedback to your actions, I suppose, in the game concentrated right at the end until after you've done everything, I think it's sort of missing that like live adaptation for it, because I felt like as I started playing these games, like if you don't have this sort of like funny skit, like this intention to make these funny videos with your friends, I feel like this game doesn't hold as much sort of, there's not as much bite to it, you know. There's not as much meat to it, because it's sort of like you run in, you record these sort of things, and then you leave again. I mean, I guess you can describe that really like any game, to be honest. I don't mean to mean that in a reductive way, but it feels like, how should I put it? I guess it feels repetitive in the sense because the stakes don't feel, there's not enough feedback for the stakes to feel high or low. It's just more like a big question mark until it actually happens. But again, on the other, I was gonna say what's wrong with me. On the other hand, that's kind of a point of a game, is the ultimate goal, in my opinion, of a game, as I say, is for the video that you create at the end, for you to have laugh at with your friends. It's not actually attaining the views, which is why I feel like there's such a sort of weird dichotomy where it's like I kind of feel like it should be a live stream and you should see the live viewers concurrently go up, but I guess that's probably hard because then you can't do live comments as well with things reacting. I don't necessarily know. The monsters in the game I can't really make much comments on. I haven't seen all that many. I saw the whisk head thing, which kind of looked quite goofy. Probably the goofiest one I've seen. There's like these screamers which just sort of like scream at you, which by the way, which is one of the first enemies I ran into, and I was like, oh my god, this game is so loud, because if they just sort of walk up to you and they just scream like a jump scare sort of scream noise, I'm just like, what the heck is this game? I also think it wasn't helped by the fact that one of the first items I actually like used was a boom mic, and the boom mic just makes everything you're pointing at so incredibly loud, like constantly, like you're walking upstairs and it's going like boom 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 boom, and I was like, oh my god, what is this? Why is this game so loud? So I think it's definitely sort of like an adaptation period of like things to get used to. What else is necessarily good about this game? I would say this game probably needs some like controls for like motion sickness things. There's a huge amount of like feel like, because all the characters are so like squishy and jumpy, and all the like things in the environment are squishy and jumpy as well. There's a crazy amount of like sort of camera swaying and shaking, I suppose, as you're moving around, which it didn't actually, surprisingly, it didn't make me motion sick, but it did sort of make me get a little bit not sick of it as in like ill sick, but like I got a bit fed up with it, I'm gonna be honest, towards the end. But I understand that's probably a design decision, that sort of thing, so I'm not gonna like necessarily take that away from them. And the environmental design I'm in a like a love-hate relationship with, because I love what it's doing. It's got that really sort of sketchy like Tim Burton-esque horror vibe to it, with all the environments having this really sort of sketchy, scritchy, scratchy texture to it. Everything's in black and white monochrome, which makes your characters stand out even more, makes the monsters blend in. But at the same time, it makes it really difficult to see anything, which is kind of like, I guess, a point of horror. But again, this is, I feel like, because my entire sort of impression of this game is built on this idea that like it's not like it's a true horror, but it's a horror to entertain rather than a horror to scare. But it's just like I can't see the entertaining things going on because I just can't see anything in this game. Which again, I want to say that this is the onus is on me. This is not on my game, because this is very much a fair design decision. It's just like, I don't know. I feel like maybe it's my settings are wrong with a monitor or something. But they get you to set the brightness to begin with, and I was like, okay, I set it like what's going on. And the first night I was like, I literally can't see like anything. Like my friends were just like, what's that? And I'm like, what are you looking at? Like, I think it was also because I had the camera to begin with, and you can't have like, well, maybe you can have a flashlight. I didn't actually check this, but the camera only like shines a light when you're recording and that sort of thing, so that probably didn't help. But I guess I was like, I felt like I was like out, like not part of the entertainment fun, because I was just like, I can't see what's going on, which I feel like is sad for this sort of game more than anything, because it's like that's kind of what you're looking at. You're kind of there for the joy and the amusing parts and the silly shenanigans which go on. I think that's something which got better with time, to be perfectly honest. I think it was like just a large adjustment period of being able to sort of like distinguish the environment from each other, because everything being so monochrome and everything having this really sort of noisy, scritchy, scratchy style and texture of it makes things sort of blend into each other pretty well. And also, it's a pretty good design decision for the fact that it makes everything feel like a maze. It's very easy to get lost in. I mean, I get kind of like lost in like all the games I suppose I play, so that's probably like neither here nor there, but it's like even more disorientating, I suppose, in that sense. So it very much feels like an intentional design decision, because I love the design it goes for. This Tim Burton-esque scratchy scratchy style gives such a sort of surreal horror to it in the first place. But at the same time, it's just like it comes with its own caveats where it's like I feel it's quite difficult to see anything. What else is really cool? I just like the concept of it, because I feel like the fact that you can make these videos and then save the videos afterwards, it's a lot of fun, you know, sort of like making them, and it's really fun watching them back and seeing the sort of silly shenanigans which happens. I forgot what I was going to say. There's, because there are so many cool sort of moments which happen during the thing, which is also, I suppose, why I'm like, I feel like it should be a live stream, and then maybe it like edits together. I don't know how you would do this, to be honest. It would probably be quite difficult, but it would edit together like highlights from like an automatic highlight from the live stream feed itself to make like a 1 minute video, because then you can capture things sort of freely without sort of having this weirdness of being like, oh, I need to hit record at this right time, and like, oh, my friend said something really cool but I didn't get it on camera, so that moment is like lost. Yeah, I guess it's also meant to sort of, that's kind of the point of it, is meant to evoke this sort of FOMO sort of thing, being like, oh, you know, I just missed that, quick, do it again, come on, so I can have it for the camera, which is totally fair. I think these are not necessarily like good or bad design decisions, these are just design decisions, which I'm just like, I don't know if this is like necessarily what they wanted or what they're going for, but it's kind of my own personal feelings I felt when I played it. So overall, I haven't really played enough to, I think, really evaluate on how like well these monsters are designed or the mechanics within the game. There's bits and parts of it I like and bits and parts of it I dislike, but at the end, I think it's a fun time. Like, I'm sort of like tempering my expectations as well, because I think the first time I played Lethal Company, I think the first time I played Lethal Company, I like loved it. I can't remember the first time I played Lethal Company, I was like, I'm not sure about this game, or if I was like, I really like it. I know I wasn't sure about playing it, because I was like, I saw some videos of it, and I was like, I'm not sure if that's really my sort of jam. But then playing it, I was like, oh, it's actually quite fun. But it probably has, amazingly, I don't think it has the same sort of different luster, I think, when it comes to Lethal Company. Because with Lethal Company, I said, this game will be as fun as long as you don't know what's going on. As soon as you know what's going on, you sort of maximize and you min-max the fun out of the game. Which is sort of what happened. Like, when the mystery, I suppose, and lure of like what the monsters did and stuff is lost, and then the challenges were like, the thresholds were getting like not reasonably easy to beat, but achievable, because you know you have a strategy and that sort of thing. I felt like Lethal Company did lose a lot of its luster, which is why I'm just like, for Lethal Company to keep going, it needs like a lot of frequent updates, otherwise it's like people will know what happens all the time. I think this one is a bit different, because it's not so much about what the monsters do, which is the key part. It's sort of how long this game survives for, I think, is how much fun your friendship group has with creating videos and these ideas, I suppose, in the first place, which I suppose is ironic. Well, not ironic, I suppose it's kind of a point, because it's meant to be content creation in the first place. That's kind of how content creation is. You keep a channel going for as long as you have like videos and ideas of stuff to make with it. So I think that's very sort of hand in hand, which I guess is good and bad in its own way, because good if discovering like what monsters do and that sort of thing ruins the mystique and the fun and the charm of the game, which certainly that is a factor in this game, but I don't think it's the main factor. I think the main factor is how much fun you can have with making these silly videos in the first place. Because even if you learn what all the monsters do, I think in this game, I think you can still, if anything, it sort of gives you more ideas of silly videos you could do, because now you can exploit the mechanics to create and stage funny moments, right? But it's as soon as you start like running out of ideas, as soon as it starts becoming routine, as soon as that video creation portion doesn't have that charm or fun that it used to, that is when the game probably dies, at least within a friend group, I say. And I don't mean that is like, I think it will just like be wiped off the face of the earth. At least that's my prediction. And that's probably when people will stop playing it in my friend circle. But people are having a fun time with it. I'm having a fun time, you know, both making and watching the videos, to be perfectly fair. I think one of the things I said about it is like, just to quickly wrap this up because we're well over time. There's a thing I do in ARAM, which is the sort of, well, not a thing I do, thing I try and encourage in ARAM, where we do like silly skits and that sort of thing, and moments where I just start like this theoretical thing going on, like improv session going on, or this concept or idea, and then we just run it to the ground, I suppose, for that ARAM session night. I think this one is also a nice facilitator of doing that sort of thing, where you can sort of adopt a character persona and act things out. Because I don't remember if it was the first or second night where I was just like, I feel like this would be really good for skits, and then I just did a pirate voice for the entire video. The entire day, and then everyone else was like immediately on board, and we were just pretending to be pirates, and stuff like that makes it really fun and silly, I think. I forgot what I was going to say about this now as well. So yeah, I don't know, it's a game very much carried by the comedic potential and willingness, I suppose, of the people who play it, not necessarily the mechanics of the game itself, which I think is both a good thing and a bad thing necessarily. I mean, I'm not saying the mechanics have nothing to contribute, but that's not what I mean. But the mechanics sort of facilitate that in the first place, but if you're not like willing to make this content, if you're not willing to be silly and have a goofy time with it, then I suppose that sort of takes away from it in the first place, that leaves nothing left for the mechanics of a game to facilitate, which is fair. Like, I mean, I think that's probably the goal of a game, so I'm not going to fault it for that. Anyway, so long and short, I think it's a pretty fun game. And I think it's very dependent on the people you play it with, how much fun you will have with it. Similar to Lethal Company, but even more so than Lethal Company, I think. But on that note, I'm going to wrap this episode up here. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope you see each other again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now. And hopefully you'll check me out when I'm streaming in 15 minutes.